How are you thinking about asynchronous collaboration? Is it a good problem? It's a nightmare of a problem. Talk to us about that. Sure.
Sure, I think we touched upon it a little
Yeah.
bit. That is exactly the problem we are trying to solve. And I think in Google, we have sorted it completely. We are literally working across time zones, across different teams, using the real-time collaboration features that is already lighted up and adopting it as a change management within our workforce as well. In addition, there are ways of blocking time where we have something like a do not disturb coming up in our calendar, again, part of the platform. Great thing is we are using our own product, so it helps us also be more in line with what our vision of the product is as a company. So we actually use that do not disturb, and it's a focus time. So you actually get a headphone kind of a logo when someone blocks a focus time for themselves. And it's okay if you have a focus time in the middle of the day, but you'll still pick up when you are out of it on the task. So we have adopted it as an organization really well. And actually, we are improving on productivity and we are turning around things much faster. When something is initiated in another time zone, say the US time zone, at a completely different time for us.
Common problem.
But by the time that team again wakes up the next day, stuff gets just done simply. And I can talk about like 10, 15 such examples that have been taken on org-wide initiatives that happened at this space with the tools and just the mindset that it is okay for not everyone to come in a call and resolve issues. You can just keep on responding to the comments left by your previous person and get going.
That's true. And the Indians' favorite time zone is the Eastern time zone because it's a very small window that you can schedule meetings after which they have to clock out. So all my friends who work across time zones say that if it's an Eastern time zone, it's great, but if it's a Pacific time zone, hell, it's a problem because the window of collaboration becomes even more shorter. But talk to us about that, Mukesh. How are you thinking about asynchronous collaboration? What are you advising your clients?
So I worked on both sides of the world. So I was 13 years in working at Microsoft in Pacific time zone.
Okay.
So I have lived that light of 12 and a half hours and 13 and a half hour difference between India and Pacific time zone. So yes, it's a challenge. But then instead of forcing the time, instead of telling them, right, I define something like work-life balance is as defined by you.
Okay.
So each person gets to define their work-life balance. But yes, we need 1 hour overlap. You decide how you want to do it.
Okay.
So people choose their work-life balance, people choose their 1 hour overlap, and they can work on it. This was when I was at Microsoft. Fast forward, now I'm at Capgemini. I have teams in 9 countries. And there are days where my day starts in Australia, which is 8 a.m. in the morning.
Of course.
And my day ends in San Francisco, which is 11 p.m. in the evening, night, right? So yes, sometimes my days are longer, but then I say, okay, fine, you know what? Each team, hopefully they don't have to have so many things, right? But yes, asynchronous productivity is, you have to look at it from a different angle. First of all, it's not just about overlap time. Ideally, it should be able to work on it without seeing the person, without talking to the person.
That's best case scenario.
Best case. So talking has to be reduced to a drastic action, which means if you are saying something, it has only one meaning.
Right.
The right meaning, right? So having communication, we use, of course, Microsoft products, not yet, Google products. But yeah, the Teams collaboration, when we're doing it, right? If I'm sending a message, it has one meaning. The document is shared, people know about it, people have put comments on it, and then open item. At the rate, the name of the person, this is for you. At the rate, name of the person, this is for you. And then they start working on it. Initially, just to get that synergy going, it took some time, especially during the pandemic and all. But after that, we were surprised. I was surprised. I thought it will not work. But it worked very well. So productivity have improved drastically because now, when I'm sleeping, somebody else is working on it. And I get a different perspective when I look at it again, compared to if we were working at the same time together. So I think it has overall improved. And talking about productivity, right? Productivity is still a very, very subjective area where people talk about how do you measure productivity. Right?
It's an HR's nightmare, but we'll get there after this.
Okay. So yes, but instead of going into that part of a number of hours you're putting in, is the output good enough or good quality rather than in Hindi, jaldi manga is the fast, poor quality. It's not worth it. But doing it the right way so that people get the output, jitna bhi output is good quality. So that's what the productivity we can go towards that.
Yeah, it's not how many lines of code, how good your code is.
How good
Are
your
you getting
code is.
enough sleep, Mukesh?
I try to.
Our next session is by Dr. Marcus Rani, who's talking about human capital and the human edge.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you can address that challenge of how do you manage 10 time zones in an everyday. Coming to you, have you found, I know you're from Fine, but have you found a right way of ensuring collaboration in an asynchronous manner?
Yeah, so our journey with asynchronous work started as everybody during pandemic, and one of the challenges that we faced was that we scaled from a 300 member org to a 1200 member org in those 1.5 to 2 years.
300 to
300 to
1200.
1200 in those 2 years,
Okay.
along with a large amount of work that we took on to scale the org overall. And immediately as the pandemic resided and the work from office started, we realized that our ways of working had fundamentally changed. To give an example, right, there were instances where decision-making processes, especially when you are working in a cross-functional team, building out a product or working on a key area that is very time critical, we found that the best way to do it was having people in together within a room so that they could jam together, brainstorm ideas, and quickly get to a decision faster. And that also promoted bonding between those teams. But especially in areas where deep work, as we call it, is or individual contributor work is there. Working on writing code, building a product, writing a product spec, things like that. Over there, asynchronous is the way to go. You need not have a group collaborating on that outcome together. You can have a single person who has the most context on the problem, and then they take the lead, and then they get to consensus within a larger unit. So we've seen kind of both both sides of that, and the way we try to balance out is that we try to not give larger high-level guardrails to the teams as to what are areas for which they should be working synchronously and get to a decision faster, be more agile in terms of their overall work, and when what are areas where they have to completely focus, be on Slack DND or whatever messaging tool that you're using, then focus on maximizing their individual productivity and then building out those practices within the team. So we're still learning as we go. We're not cracked it, and I also work within not a very large org, but at least a reasonably small sized org. So we're still learning as we go.
And it's a bigger challenge for you to add 900 heads as opposed to Mukesh or Sumedha, because they have already 5-digit, 6-digit number of employees, and 900 is not a small number. But for you, it's an incredibly huge number to suddenly deal with when you scale out of that. And that directly brings you to, are you bringing the ROI of that? And that boils down to productivity, right? And says, how do you measure productivity? And to explain the scale of this problem, you can say productivity is how many tickets I have closed. But somebody else might also say productivity is how many times those same tickets are not reopened, which is also the quality of work. And in the sense that you can get a coder to give you like 1,000 lines of code, but Mukesh might say, look, there are 2 lines of code that I need which will solve my business problem. So how are you looking at measuring productivity? I mean, what are the various yardsticks that you're using, which are all right, depending on the kind of organizations you work with?
Yeah, so while I was working at Microsoft, I was asked this question a couple of times, and definitely there were multiple ways. Then there was something called function point people came up with, and that also was not useful for a product company like Microsoft, right? So we tried everything and all. I think it's not working out. But then we found out a sweet spot when I was back, and the same thing we're applying at Capgemini also, and it is helping us very well. So we start, you know what, a unit of work. Right? Okay. How do you define those parts? It's not the functions, it's not the function point and all of those parts, but we found out that it is actually the deliverables, what will the user see? In simple terms, nowadays called user story. Okay. Right? What is my path, what is the user story I'll see? And in some cases, it could be simple, medium, complex, and we were able to do those parts, and that actually helping us people understand that yes, if it is simple, it is 4 days, complex, 15 days, and then complex will be higher, but medium will be 15 days, and then complex will be, let's say, 1.5 months. And people are able to understand that, yes, I now understand that part. They still have they can fine tune those parts. Now, measuring productivity will be, when you're doing it, are you doing it right the first time? Okay? And that part is something which sometimes hard to believe it. And that it took some time for bringing that culture at Microsoft. And I've written in my second book also how it was done there. But now when I'm implementing it at Capgemini, it's easy because people know that somebody have done it, somebody have tried it. It becomes easier for people to do it. Second point, how much of the back and forth, right? Doing it right the first time, but how much back and forth, how much of the, I understood this way, I misunderstood those parts, right? That is very well done by using checklist.
Yeah.
Am I done yet? I will create a checklist called Am I done yet? That's the second part which have been done. And third measure, irrespective of what you've done, if the client or if the user is saying it is bad, right?
Okay.
So that measure, when people see, and then and I use it in a more fun way. I say again, if you pass my check, somebody else will do. So I start doing testing. Or Mukesh test kar raha hai. So they'll have that part. So these three parts, once you combine that, if we came up with a score, that this is how the score will be, and then people try to beat the score and say, I want to be more than 0.8. And 0.8 we consider it's good score. Not the outstanding one, but 0.9 people are like, wow, you are rocking. And 1 is the max we can achieve, right? So people are able to try striving to do that. Even freshers, I'm surprised to see, they're able to get 0.65, 0.7 very well. So those could be some way to look at it, the measures.
If a company looks at a 5-point scale, and usually people look at a 3.5 or a 4, and you say that I've got a 0.8, it can be quite comical until you clarify as to what that scale is and how you've built it all about.
Yeah.
Kushan, what about you? How do you guys, measure?
Yeah, so I think similar to what Mukesh mentioned, right? We have shifted the focus from individual productivity to the outcomes of a team, and we have started learning from the practices that large organizations follow. So in fact, we started applying the OKR framework a couple of years back, and then those OKRs and then trickled down from the company to smaller pods across the org, and then each of them align towards that larger goal that they are focusing on. So we stop those OKRs setting at the pod or at the team level. We don't drill it down to the individuals. Individuals are free to optimize their work according, as long as they're meeting those OKRs, we are okay with that. So the focus across the team is then shifted from not maximizing for things like a number of tickets solved, number of commits on a code. All of these can be gamified over time. Yeah. They are very easy to gamify these metrics. And then as long as, even if they do one commit in a day, but they're able to reach those goals, we are okay with that. Right? And if there are time-sensitive critical projects which have to be met in a timeline with a certain quality, of course, all the OKRs carry that metric of what is acceptable quality, what is acceptable time in which we need to get the thing out. Having said that, all the other metrics that you mentioned are good indicators of the overall health or practices of that particular team. So if a team is, for example, releasing things only once a month, then definitely there are some practices that need to be looked at and can be optimized better. So we look at those attributes like release frequency, whether the releases are breaking after a large feature being shipped out. All of those things help us improve the processes, but that's where we use them for improving the overall health and process within the team. But the OKRs then guide us towards where we want to go.
That does open a Pandora's box, because in a college project, no one guy does all the work, but the team gets the credit. So you'll also have to start factoring in. It's like an index-based fund, right? In the sense, one script can do very, very well, but the rest of it can. So it's a great problem to think about. Like I said, there's no one straight answer. Sumedha, how are you thinking about this? What have you changed across Google to help you hone in on nailing it down?
Yeah, we also made a change in our evaluation policy. So OKRs were there with Google for quite some time. We actually have taken it to the next level of making it more outcome-based, where groups, smaller groups also, can set expectations which are measured on a quarterly basis. So we relook at our expectations, which are a little bit more tangible than maybe at the PA level OKRs. So make your own expectations depending on which part of the PA you are in. You could be on product development side, or you could be on the GTM side, or program side, or marketing side. Expectations will be therefore set along which function within that PA you are in, and bringing in more tangibility. So while on the product development side or coding side, some of the metrics that they have called out make sense. On the business side, of course, numbers make sense. And there are other things that we are looking at as we are growing Google Cloud. I can say things like, how many new customers are we onboarding? How many new customer advocates have we brought on board? How many customer case studies have we published? Public references. So a marketing team may have those as their expectations. A sales team may have counts of wins, and wins could be defined, and what is a win. The strategy function may look at how many less number of reviews have been done. So we are going to move down from having 5 reviews or 4 reviews in a quarter to maybe 2 reviews in-depth reviews, and the others will be like with a much smaller team. How many people are attending a meeting? So there was this leadership piece that Sundar talked about, that can we do meetings with less number of people, right? So we actually went top down across the organization to see if less number of people could join in a meeting and get it resolved, then we don't need everybody to be in the meeting. So there are multiple ways of looking at this question, and it's a very difficult question you have posed. But I think everyone will try finding their own ways of cracking it. And there will always be slack, and organizations will keep on relooking and finding newer ways. And hence, we genuinely are coming into this with a very open mode. We are saying that we are okay to change expectations every quarter. Maybe there won't be drastic changes, but some tweaks here and there. If you're seeing that, okay, getting 10 customers to talk to us in a quarter is not feasible, so why put that stress on the team? Maybe get 5 customers. And again, I'm just taking an example from a sales team here. Similarly, like what is doable versus what is not achievable, or what do we need to tweak at this point of time? Like, do we want more volume, or do we want bigger business from one organization? So depending on vision of the customer as well as our vision, we are trying to align. So it is not something that I can say we have cracked, or we want to crack also. We want to keep evolving this.
Yeah, and it's an evolving problem as well. But just stay with me, Sumedha. I remember back in, 2020, November, December, January 21, one of these months, we did a panel discussion where we were talking about productivity-based impact due to security concerns. And that was a time when you had people who had, hybrid clouds. It wasn't a pure cloud environment. When your edge servers weren't sorted out, EdgeSec was a huge concern. Companies hadn't sorted their bandwidth issues out, because I could be sitting at home, I would have terrible bandwidth compared to, what the company is doing it internally. How relevant are those problems today? Or is that something that you have solved for as a part of your product suite?
I think it is more solved today than it was back in 2020. Thanks to pandemic, we have become more adaptable to a lot of these changes ourselves. And then product companies have also evolved, right? Some of the features that I talked about earlier in the session today. We actually rolled out 300 plus features last year, all towards or targeting towards these smaller aspects of how do you make a connection more meaningful. It's not like the entire platform was not there in 2020, but what the platform was back then versus what it is today. Google Meet as a platform, if I can say. It's changed incredibly. And the reason for that is we believe that it's a continuous process. We continue to get user research done on a regular basis, and we try to take these problems that you talked about and we build it in. We have a very focused way of taking customer feedback, and we drive it up to product, and they are prioritized based on which customers, how many customers across the globe are actually asking for these. And that's a process that we have. We call them technical blockers. They're not really blockers. They are all pain points or asks customers are coming to us with. But we flag them as blockers because they are blockers towards, again, adoption. Yeah. Right? So that's how we are trying to solve them. And I would say we are in a much better place than we were 2 years back. But I don't think it's going to just go away. Bandwidth issues, yes, we have solved. But can it be better? Of course it can be.
Just to take on that, Mukesh, in the sense that, how are you advising your clients? In the sense that Sumedha said we've come a long way today. Are your clients far more mature than what they were a couple of years back, or do you find that security is still something that you need to constantly reiterate as a basic point? What's the landscape there?
So first of all, Google Meet, I love it. It just works. Perfect, right? But yeah, so when I'm talking to client, before pandemic, there were several agreements, contracts, which clearly says no working from home. When we went back, we used artificial intelligence to scan thousands of contracts to see what clause is there which will, we had a conversation and we found out those points. But when you talk about security, right? Security, it has to be by design. It will not be enabled or disabled because if it is possible to disable it, somebody will disable it, right? So definitely, by default, it should be. So when we're able to talk to client, as part of my role as a chief technology officer, when I'm talking to a client, it will be done. In Hindi, there is a phrase like "मैं हूं ना," right? So we give that confidence that yeah, it will be done, and this is how it's done, right? So when they look at it, that intrusion detection or this thing, IP addresses, I created a solution which was work from home solution analytics in 2 weeks after we went lockdown. It was actually give on a map where this request is coming from. Okay. Wait a minute, why is Mukesh in this region? Mukesh is supposed to be in Mumbai, right? So those are some alerts we'll fire, and then lots of false alerts in the beginning, but yes, people were able to do this part, and then we brought it down. So that monitoring, client loved it part, the security part of it. Second part, data. Not just allowing people to have access. Like, I don't use the word implicit access at all. Like, even if you are doing something, you have to have multiple layers, you have to ask for access multiple times, and everything gets recorded. So no more implicit access. Zero trust, what you call normally, right? And the third part, right? Allowing them to audit. You do audit, you do system, and they do testing, regular testing, penetration testing and all, and every time it comes all zero issues, zero reported on, people love it. So that's the confidence we have to build, and we have done that as part of the moving into the hybrid mode, or moving into work from home, and now into hybrid mode.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Kushan, just to add into something Sumedha was saying a while back, which is essentially that security is not my client's concern anymore. And since we have taken that off their plate, like for instance, I remember back in 2010 when I was thinking I can set up an SMTP server by myself, everybody said, don't try such nonsense. It's way too complicated and it's going to be too much maintenance just to run even a hobby server from home. As somebody who's leading engineering at Find, I mean, you have solutions off the shelf. You can get security service, infrastructure as a service. You just need to put the components together. Is security less of a problem for you today?
Security, I don't think it will never be a problem. I think the way to look at it is, as Mukesh mentioned, it has the entire organization and the platform that you're building has to be secure by design. So when I say that, there are a ton of tools out there which give various aspects or solve parts of the security for us. And to give you some background, so we run omnichannel e-commerce platforms for a large set of Indian retail brands, as well as all the Reliance Retail brands combined, as we are part of the Reliance Retail group. And running e-commerce for such a large group, each of which has millions of individually have millions of customers, the millions of transactions happening on the platform. Handling PII data is something that we have to deal with very, very seriously, because if we misconfigure any out-of-the-shelf tool in a way that it doesn't treat PII data correctly, it can be a problem for us. So we have to be extremely paranoid, and that's what we are. And so one of the things that we've done, apart from having a fully staffed DevSecOps team, is also within the DevSecOps team we have a red team that continuously evangelizes security within the organization, be it software engineering practices, overall organizational culture, things like, how do we stop, phishing attacks from happening. So there are various ways to gamify that and then make that as a part of the culture. And on the engineering side, the way to do it is, the way to be more paranoid is by having, rigorous set of audits at every layer of the software development process, so that anything that goes out, it has a lot of security guardrails baked in. Of course, we can reduce or delegate a part of that to the cloud environments themselves, because if you're using managed components, which Google Cloud, AWS or Azure provides, it does take off a lot of burden from us. But having said that, we still have to ensure that those tools themselves are fully compliant. We have to understand those very deeply, and then understand them from a security posture as well. So those are a couple of things that we've learned so far. But it's not as if it's a large. I would not say it's a large problem, but we still have to be extremely paranoid about the way we do security.
Well, talking about processes, right, in the sense that here's an interesting problem, no right answer, folks. AI, right, in the sense that off late, the amount of fantastic angry comments that I'm reading about GitHub Copilot, which is essentially going to help you code along with you, it's out there. But the question is how are organizations going to look towards it and the lens that you're going to put towards it. I mean, if I'm completing a code that I need to do and that's going to deliver your business objectives, even though half the thinking is done by some server sitting in the other part of the world, what is your sentiment towards tools like these, which are evolving and getting better by the day, as opposed to, it boils down to our question about productivity at the end of the day. Is it about finishing the job, or is it, leading on to AI to get the job done better? What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah. So I'll tell you. So see, this is not new. Of course, it's slightly more advanced right now, but code generators were there even 20 years back. As part of my role, I also run a program called Millennial Garage, wherein I encourage people to come and do some innovation in that part. And as part of my global head of innovation, I also encourage people to spend 20% of their time doing innovation, right? So now what they're saying is they want 20%. Again, 20% is not official enough, right? Which means they have to do the full job, and on top of it, they have to do something more, right? And then to get that time out, they will try to do a good job in their day-to-day thing what they do. So looking at generative AI, looking at chatbot to write some code and everything, and this is all there. But the thing which we have done, which is the peer review process, where if you have done something, you better know what it is there, right? And second part, being cognizant about are you infringement, is there an IP infringement? So we have tools which we actually do, Black Duck, White Source, some of the tools are there which will actually scan the code and then say, hey, is this code really open source code? Is it code copied from somebody else, or it's your own code?
It's like Turnitin for academics in the sense that you check the code.
Yeah. So when they look at it, and I'm very transparent. I'm not going to be police. I don't have time to be police. This is a tool, you do it, and only when it passes, then you come out. So when the peer reviewer look at it and they see the score, they validate those and then go forward. So there is a mechanism in place which will make sure somebody have done the right job. Okay? So I remember I was at one of the IIT to recruitment, and the person's, I asked question and I said, don't worry. 3 times he said. I said, have you really done this project? He said, no sir, I copied. I copy kar diya, theek hai, pad to lete. It's okay to copy, right? But then at least you should have read it, right? And that's my answer, that understand what is there, and that will do a good job rather than just blindly copying. So I would not say copying increases productivity. I definitely will not. But yes, if it is open source, blessed open source, white labeled open source solutions are there, and if you're using it, that's fine. But then make sure it's part of the process rather than hiding it and then just improving it. So that is my strategy around those, and that's what we are trying to implement at Capgemini as a policy.
Honesty is the best policy. No problem there. Sumedha, your thoughts on AI and how it's going to impact your workforce?
I think it can bring in more productivity just because there is this saying that don't reinvent the wheel. Okay. So it is up to the person, the individual, and of course the processes, as Mukesh said, are being set up by organizations, that where do you use these officially and what amount of oversight needs to be there. I think that is important. So there are policy changes or process rigor that organizations need to bring in if they're officially allowing this to be used. But from a technology point of view, I think we are in a great space as users where our inputs for so many years, which we have, through our personal usage on multiple products, have been putting in. So the smart response creation in Gmail,
which
it's
I
amazing.
Use a lot, by the way.
It's now we have become so used to it that if that tab wasn't there, I feel like I'm writing too much. But it was much, like Mukesh mentioned, it has been there for many, many years. We are now taking it to the next level of actually making it even more generative with the power of the language models that we are embedding. But a part of this has already been there. And where is the data coming from? It's coming from us. Yeah. So if that stops, if humans stop interacting, this AI will not work, because at the end of the day, all these models need data to keep on improving. So you cannot take the human out of this. I mean, there is this lot of buzz around Gen AI taking away jobs. I don't think that's real. We'll become more efficient. We'll do something else. We'll spend time. We'll become more productive, do things with less
more
number
innovation.
of work.
More innovation, probably.
Yeah, more innovation. But it's not going to take away human beings. I mean, at the end of the day, the data that is fed into these models have come from human beings, right? So I think that's my take. If officially it needs to be embedded, there has to be some policies put in place, or else, the person needs to be accountable for that person's outcome. I cannot make AI accountable for what, what has been produced.
That's a huge legal conundrum that you've just looked at, saying that, which is still, like I said, a great problem that people are still working through.
It is the employee I'm paying. So as an employer, you are accountable for your output.
Yeah, that's true. Kushan, are you friends with AI?
Yes, to a large extent. But still, relatively new friend of mine. So I think the way we looked at it is that across the company, there are a certain class of problems that are monotonous in nature or drain a lot of time, and people don't usually get more deep work done in those time slots. So if you are doing probably research for a document or writing a product spec, doing competitive research, building out, a banner for probably one of our properties, or probably writing code to an extent which is for which a boilerplate already exists somewhere, right? So for all of those classes of problems, AI is a good aid for us to boost productivity, save time overall. But there has to be a human in the loop after that to ensure that the outcome of that and the output of that is certified and it meets what is expected from a human in that loop. So then for us to do that for each of those specific areas, be it writing code, be it generating a product spec or doing competitive research, there are certain quality benchmarks similar to what Mukesh Avent said. Like there has to be a checklist, and if that checklist is passed, then that's good to go. Usually, that's how we look
I
at
like
it.
the overwhelming positivity in which all three of you are saying that, we like it. If it gets the job done in a qualitative way, it's a good way to go. One quick question. You spoke about the millennial garage for young people. We spoke about the younger generation of people and chat emojis. You are dealing with young people, as a part of your business. Gen Z are known to be as a tricky set of people to work with, in the sense that if you complete a sentence with a full stop, it's known as you're being serious. A smiley face is not a smiley face. Everything that we understood as definitions of interaction have been appended. How are you thinking about building a workplace for the next generation of workers, where the gap is significant, coming to look at it? What are your thoughts about it? How are you building that next generation of workplace? Anybody?
So we are also Gen Z, just few days difference, few thousand days difference.
Few thousand days.
That's it, right? So I think to understand them, I think we have to be like that. So when I'm in Millennial Garage, half of the time when I'm in office, I'm in Millennial Garage. I'm not wearing blazer, I'm not wearing shirts, even t-shirts and all. And I'm talking the language. I choose the lingo, Hindi language, and all the things. Then I'm on the floor. And then next few minutes later, I'm wearing my blazer and all. I'm doing a client presentation, right? Okay. So I think Gen Z want to understand what they want, but the best part is give them the problem, keep them busy.
Right.
That's what I found in Millennial Garage. I don't give the solution. I say, guys, I want this thing, and then nobody asks me why, why and when. If they ask me when, they got it. Okay, kal chahiye tha mere ko. Like I wanted it yesterday, right? So, but then yes, they'll try it. But then once we give them the problem, they'll go out of the way to work on it because they love freedom. They love freedom the way they want it and all. And yes, sometimes 20%, 30% of the time the output is not that good. Tell them, no, do this part. But then that excitement, that the thing that I'll be able to do something good, that excites them a lot. That's something we have to do. Second part, right? The language and everything. So I would say at least half the time I get my emails reviewed. Okay? By Gen Z.
Okay.
Okay? Hey guys, hey, I'm sending this important email. Can you please review it? They love it. A CTO is sending an email to like, hey, can you please review? And they will put all those emojis and everything and all that. And I use it as it is. I send it out.
You should give him a Gen Z chatbot. So.
Okay. And my CEO loves that part. Mukesh is speaking like a Gen Z language and all, right? So that's the second part of it. And the last part which I found is, so for them, it's a purpose. Yeah. When I launched this program called Million Hours in Capgemini, right? It was about everybody donates money. People take pride in donating money. Good. But I think, can you go one step forward? Can we start donating hours? And people love that part. Gen Z, 40,000 hours I got donated in 3 weeks. People donated hours. How? Do whatever you want. No restriction. I want to go and deliver 1 hour lecture. 1 hour get counted there.
Lovely.
Right? And that people loved it because Gen Z want a purpose to be associated with. It could be sustainability, it could be healthcare, it could be animal welfare. You name it, you decide. Million hours. You log it in million hours. And then we have gamification and all those parts. Built by Millionaire Garage. Yeah. And they love it. And now it's a Capgemini program, Million Hours.
Which is great because, American universities, the academic system is credit-based, right? In the sense
yes.
you can be engineering, but you can get a credit by studying Russian literature if you'd like. So, yeah. But fundamentally, it comes into what you are doing as in a wholesome sense.
And engagement is great. And I can tell you one number. I cannot give the exact number. But the retention of people who have been through Millionaire Garage or these programs they get associated with, the retention is very, very high. compared to what we had what we saw in the Great Resignation. Some of the other people who are not associated with that. So that's why this program is going global now.
I'm putting that into ideas to copy, by the way. Kushan?
So I think what you've seen, especially as we scaled the org since the last couple of years, is that we had a lot of Gen Zs entering our org overall very together. So much that the ratio is now skewed more towards Gen Z and they're more recent towards the org. So we've taken steps to address that by not just having like a 3-month onboarding program, but then there has to be a rigorous cultural onboarding which carries a lot of context towards what the company was, the way it was built over time, the pains that we went through to reach where we are today. And that has really helped us absorb everybody well into the ecosystem. With that, that has given everybody a lot of context and they can relate to more towards what you're trying to do as an org overall. Then from that, there'll always be a lot of people within that program who are taking a lot of initiatives, for example.
Yeah.
So they get paired with probably the generation 2 leaders who have already built large parts of the product, large parts of the org, so that they can work with them one-on-one, give them the guidance that they need, give them very quick and corrective feedback on where they need to improve, so that every Gen Z is now paired with a prior generation leader.
Okay.
And this helps us, scale leadership as well. So the moment you've done that for probably a period of a quarter or 2 quarters, we know that there are, people are ready to take on more independent, more larger initiatives. And with that, having the right autonomy and the right, set of at least guardrails, leadership practices in place, then they are ready to fly, and then they're ready to lead large mandates. So those are things that have worked out.
Common element of purpose. Sumita, closing words from you. You guys need to be ready before everybody else is. So how are you approaching this thinking?
I think I'm very impressed from hearing from them that Gen Z as a work group is having a differentiated experience.
The older people?
With the older people. I have not experienced this kind of pairing in Google. So I think we expect everybody to, be open to everybody else's ideas. So we don't call out age in that fashion, but I think a little bit of the principles, the foundational principles that they talked about is what we are trying to also bring in our processes, as well as the tools. Again, we are a product company, so we use our own products. So a lot of things that we say we do, we actually make sure that it also reflects in the products that we do. So we do have meetings where we start with music, where people are, waiting. And that could be like anybody, the country VP, the region VP, but he starts with a BTS, music as a pop music while everybody's waiting. So I don't know whether that's a Gen Z trend, or it's just that everybody in Google is very open to being their own ways in their workplace. We don't shy away from showing our own personalities. It could be the Gen Z, or it could be the baby boomers, whichever group that is. So that's something that is very much encouraged. Then I talked about having fun. I think there is a lot that we need to learn from that generation, that you can do amazing work, brilliant work, and on-time work while having fun. That's something that I have learned personally. And we are opening up a lot of our tools. Like, we have a game embedded in Google Meet, where when you're waiting for meetings to start, people actually can play the game. So one of my customers said, I'm going to switch it off. I'm not going to let my employees use this. But, in Google, we do it. It's not like we're not working. But it's just that, that mindset that are you open to different people working in different styles and mingling with each other? And who knows? I mean, even a baby boomer could want to be like a Gen Z and other way around as well. So, we don't do these kind of programs, but we do run a lot of things where I've seen people just doing both ways, swaying both ways. So I think that's something we'll continue to figure out as that workforce comes and becomes the majority. Like, there is, in a very few years, they are going to become the majority, right?
It's already a big percentage in Capgemini. 38% of them are Gen Z.
38?
In India. Okay. And second, I found a practice that we don't call them Gen Z at all.
Okay.
Because it actually might sound that, I'm calling them Gen Z because now I'm going to be a different Mukesh to behave like working with Gen Z. So we don't want that. Okay. We don't call that at all. And then we're talking just being normal, right? So some of the thing we introduced, I copied from Modi ji, chat pe charcha.
Okay.
Okay, so I take 20 people out. Okay, I don't call them Gen Z, but yeah, I take 20 people out, go there, samosa, vada pav and all, we'll have that with chai and everything. And people love that interaction part of it, They want to hear from what's happening and everything. And that kind of involvement when they have it, then they want to learn, okay, how you went there, what kind of things, what problem you faced. They want to learn all those parts and being that part. And it's the thing you talked about, like pairing with person. Yeah. It's an amazing way. When I encourage people, some of my leaders, international, not just India, international leaders, okay, hey, have one of these people working with you. Why not? Shadow you. And people at that Gen Z level, they're ready to go above and beyond 12 hours of work if they're getting some excitement, they're getting some engagement. Of course, we don't count hours, but then people want to engage, go for it. Why not?
Absolutely. Lovely. A real insight into how you're thinking about building the tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Sumedha, Mukesh, and Prashant.